Okay, now muted everyone. We should be able to begin. We are on Daf Mem Ches, page 48. And we got up to 48b yesterday. So on 48b, let's go over the Gemara from yesterday. So we spoke about the Mishnah that mentioned that Sukkah is 7 days, and that when you finish eating in the Sukkah, you should not take down your Sukkah, but you should do something to show you're preparing for Shmini Atzeres. And the Mishnah's wording was Meirid es hakelim. You take down the items. Had different meanings of what that referred to, but basically it's for showing that you're preparing, either setting your getting your table ready for Yontiv, or taking down your fancy vessels or chairs or other items that were in your sukkah, and you're doing an act that shows that you are preparing for Yom Tov. And the Mishnah had said, the Mishnah really uses these words, they covered Yom Tov because of, to honor the Yom Tov. The Gemara had asked a question, and that is, the question the Gemara had asked was, if you don't have kalim to lower, what should you do? And the Gemara said, what do you mean? What did you use? What you had to have some type of utensils. So the Gemara said, no. What we're asking for is, you have no place to put anything because you're planning on eating in the sukkah, even on Shmini Atzeres. So what should you do? You don't want to be over about places. So this question, we initially thought it's we're trying to figure out what you can do as a means of preparing for Yom Tov. And the real question was, what do you do if you're going to be eating in the sukkah on Shmini Atzeres in Eretz Yisrael? And on that, the Gemara had two options. That you have to be either peiches ba'arba, you have to somehow remove the schach, and by doing that, you remove 4 handbreadths of schach. This way, you will be able to dwell in the sukkah, and the way that would be done is that you would basically be parceling the sukkah. You know, it's not the way it's done. The consequence of by doing that, what you're accomplishing, the accomplishment of taking the 4 handbreadths out, is that you parcel the sukkah. At least that's the simple understanding. The problem with that is, and this we spoke about yesterday, is that there really the psul, the invalidity, the invalidation of a sukkah is really when it's open 3 handbreadths, not 4 handbreadths. So why do you need to remove 4 handbreadths of schach along the sukkah? Remove 3 handbreadths of schach, and that will be also invalidating the sukkah. So so the different answers that were given, and we spoke yesterday a few different answers. Either you're really substituting the kosher schach with invalid schach, and by doing that, you actually need 4 handbreadths to invalidate the sukkah. If it would stay empty, then it would only need 3 handbreadths to invalidate the sukkah. What you're trying to do is invalidate the sukkah. In this way, you will be able to eat in the sukkah and not transgress bal tosef, adding on to a mitzvah. So that was one way. That was one way of learning. Another option is that by removing 4 handbreadths, what you're really doing is making a hecker. It's not about parceling the sukkah. It's making a hecker, making a recognizable act that this is no longer a sukkah. And 4 handbreadths is always called a davar chashuv. It's called something that's significant, and therefore it would not about invalidating the sukkah. 3 would be enough to invalidate, but maybe you really need 4 in order to make it recognizable that this is a not for the sake of a mitzvah, but this is just a place where you're eating. This is just using it to eat. Now, and then there's another commentary that explains that it's really like a combination of these insights. That if it's a big sukkah, then removing 3 handbreadths is not going to invalidate the sukkah really, because you have a big sukkah, so you have 4 walls. So when you remove 3 handbreadths, you have 2 sukkahs now. So it's still kosher sukkahs. So you didn't really invalidate, and you want to eat in the sukkah, it's going to be like Bal Tosef. Now you have 2 Bal Tosefs because you have 2 sukkahs. I don't know about that. But you actually did not invalidate your sukkah. If it's a big sukkah, you end up, instead of what we're thinking to invalidate the sukkah, what you're really doing is you are dividing the sukkah in half and making 2 sukkahs out of it. Because so for that, you need to have daled tfachim, 4 handbreadths, which will be a heker. So again, it's similar to the previous interpretation, but it's explaining it that it's not just it's not to just for the heker. It's really either to invalidate the sukkah, or for a big sukkah, you would at least do a heker that would accomplish this what you need to accomplish, of making some type of recognizable act that this is not for the sake of a mitzvah. In other words, for a small sukkah, you could actually get away with removing 3 handbreadths, but for a big sukkah, you would need 4 handbreadths. That's one of the ways of learning. Anyway, so that's the one option. The other option was lighting a candle, which was also somewhat of an interesting little point, because when you light the candle, we learned it on going back a number of pages, going back almost 20 pages, but we learned it must be about 20 pages, must be about 20 weeks ago. But the thing is, there was a problem with having a candle lit in your sukkah if it's a small sukkah. And that had to do with the danger involved, or it had to do with the fact that you're minimizing the space. If you have a candle, then no one can actually dwell in that space of the candle, and that minimizes the size of your sukkah. So those were 2 understandings in that page 29, where we learned about the problem of having a candle in the sukkah. Commentaries over here understand that there's the one that because you are lighting this candle here in the sukkah, this allows you to actually eat in the sukkah on Shmini Atzeres or on Simchas Torah outside of Israel. Why? Because it's no longer a proper sukkah. So commentaries say it sounds like having a candle in a small sukkah would actually invalidate the sukkah, even b'diavad, even after the fact. At least that's one way of understanding this. In other words, we're trying to invalidate the sukkah so that you won't transgress Bal Tosef. So if you learn that way, that we're trying to invalidate the sukkah, then it sounds like lighting a candle in it in a very small sukkah. Again, it's not a sukkah that any of us use on a regular basis, but it may be one of those like pop-up sukkahs that you could just hardly fit in, put a chair in, and that's about it. That type of sukkah maybe would be a problem to have a candle in, and by bringing a candle in, it would allow you to eat in that sukkah on Shmini Atzeres in Israel or on Simchas Torah. And the Gemara explains that each of these rabbis really were talking about a specific area, either Eretz Yisrael or Chutz La'aretz, either Lon for us, meaning in Bavel, or in Eretz Yisrael, was lahu for them in Eretz Yisrael. So Reb Chia bar Ashi was for Eretz Yisrael. You could take down the sukkah, because by you taking it down, you're removing the schach. You no longer need the sukkah on the 8th day, so you're all set. But if you're going to dwell in the sukkah on Simchas Torah outside of Israel, so when are you taking down the schach? You can't take it down on Shmini Atzeres because it would be breaking a tent. So you'd end up taking it down Shana Rabbah. Then it's not going to be a kosher sukkah. So basically, the rabbi that says to take down the schach is talking about Eretz Yisrael. The rabbi that says that you're lighting a candle, that would be good. Even that would work for Chutz La'aretz. So that was the that was the understanding in the Gemara. And then the Gemara said, yeah, but that whole candle business is only a problem with small sukkah. We all light candles in the sukkah, right? None of us have a 7 handbreadth sukkah. I don't know, no one dwells. We don't use those type of sukkahs. So we all light our candles in the sukkah. So that's definitely not ruining our sukkah. So what do they do in order to make a hecker? So the Gemara says you bring the vessels, they bring your utensils into the sukkah. That would show that you're not using the sukkah for a sukkah, because these type of used plates are not acceptable to be in the sukkah. And what this really means is that you have to do some type of act that shows that you're not using this as a special, with the special holiness and sanctity, so to speak, of a sukkah, but rather you're just using it as a place where you're going to eat, because you don't have another place. So, and I mentioned that in shul, a lot of shuls that I've seen, when they eat in the sukkah and Simchas Torah, they bring the garbages in. And this way, it's a hecker. It's clear that you're not planning on doing it for a mitzvah, because the garbage is not allowed in the sukkah. Now, I should mention and remind you that when we did learn about the candle, we also learned about these monei michla, these utensils, these kalim. And Rashi had learned over there that it means your actual plates, that you're not allowed to have dirty plates in the sukkah. You have to take them out. Once, when people finish eating, you should take out the plates. Taisus over there had learned that it doesn't mean plates. It means like big bowls, pots and pans that you normally don't bring into a dining room. You normally leave the pot and the pan in the kitchen. You bring the food into the dining room. Now, so pots and pans are not supposed to be in the sukkah. So that's what it refers to when it mentions about bringing money michla, that plates that are used, that wouldn't be a problem, but it's the plates, it's the big pots and pans that would be an issue. Okay, so that was really that was the Gemara, Mishnah, and the Gemara that basically covers this Gemara. I did want to touch base because Jeffrey had asked a question, two questions yesterday, and so I looked it up. It's basically in the Rambam and Hilchas and Karbanis. So the Rambam says, I think we said it correctly yesterday, the way I explained it. But I'll just read it for you from the Rambam, so you'll be more convinced. So let me just pull it up here on my phone. So the Rambam says in the laws of Chagiga, in the Karbanis section of the Rambam, sacrifices, and he talks about the sacrifice of the Chagiga. In that section, he says, Sholosh mitzvahs, there are 3 positive mitzvahs that the Yidden were obligated on every holiday, and they are the Re'iyah, where it says Yeira'eh kol zechorcha, all the male Yidden should be Yeira'eh, they should see. So holiday sacrifice, and Simcha, as it says, v'samachta b'chagecha. The Re'iyah is that you should be seen, your face should be seen in the Azara, and bring with it a korban oila. You bring with it a burnt offering, whether from birds or from an animal. And if you don't bring it, not only you didn't fulfill a positive mitzvah, but you transgressed a negative mitzvah, as it says, lo yero panai reikav, don't show your face empty. And the Rambam continues with Chagiga, and he says Chagiga is to bring a shlamim on the first day of Yom Tov when you come to be seen. And it's known that shlamim only comes from animals. You can't bring a bird for a shlamim. And these two mitzvahs, women are not obligated in. And then it says in the simcha mitzvah is that you should bring a peace offering. So the first one was the shalmei chagiga, was the shlamim of the holiday peace offering, and that has to be from an animal. Now comes the simcha offering, the joy offering, and that is also a peace, so it's called a type of peace offering, and that's in addition to the shalmei chagiga. In addition to the peace offering of the chagiga, you have a mitzvah to bring the simcha, as it says, and women are obligated in this mitzvah. And it says the Re'iyah and chagiga do not have any sheer exact amount. A person can give as whatever he wishes. Midrabanan, there's a certain amount of value that it has to have, and it has to be at least shava ma kesef, and the shalmei chagiga can't be less than 2 kesef. So there's a certain amount of value. And but according to a person's ability, and the Shalmei Simcha, the rabbis didn't give any measure. And when you come, you bring these karbanos, or you bring money to buy these, and that's basically it. And if you didn't bring it on the first day, the Oilas Riyah and the Shalmei Chagiga, you can bring it on the other days of the holiday, as it says that they are all tashlumei rishonim. They're all a makeup for the first day. So if you don't bring it on the first day, you bring it on the rest of the days of the holiday. But it is a mitzvah to bring it on the first day. If you didn't, whether shaygig or mazid, you can bring it on the other days. And if you didn't bring it at all, then it's a big problem. It's called a crookedness that you can't fix. And so basically what we're seeing is that that the mitzvah of Oilas Riyah, Shalmei Chagiga, Shalmei Simcha are really all applicable on the first day and onward. But Erev Yom Tov, there isn't really any such korban except by Erev Pesach, where you have a mitzvah to slaughter the korban Pesach and the Chagiga of Yudalid. But again, that's in addition to the holiday offerings that will be brought the next day. And then it talks about that it's not Doicha Shabbos or Tumah, because these are very interesting karbonos. They're similar to a they're similar to an individual's carbon. They don't have a zman kavua karbonis tzibur. They're not like a set time like a karbonis tzibur. And if you miss it one day, you could bring it the next day. So it's really a little different than a communal offering. They are doicha Yom Tov. They are push off Yom Tov. And even though you can't bring personal offerings on Yom Tov, but, and I think this was David's question, you can't bring personal offerings on Yom Tov, but these you do bring on Yom Tov. So I think that covers Jeffrey and David's points with karbonos. And even the Shalmei Simcha, they all are brought on Yom Tov.
That means slaughtered on Yom Tov.
Slaughtered on Yom Tov. Yes, thank you.
I can't imagine how they could handle this capacity. As Erev Pesach, we know the people come to the courtyard and they slaughter their own lambs because there's not enough Kohanim to do that. And the Kohanim line up and they collect the blood and pass the blood so that it all gets splashed on the Mizbeach.
Right.
But there's not enough Kohanim to slaughter all the animals.
It's not an issue of the Kohen. The only issue would be you could still have Yisraelim slaughtering. The only problem is it's in a certain area. The carbon oil has to be slaughtered in a certain place in the north. So
Right.
yeah,
But
good,
so
good point.
so the Re'iyah, you said the Re'iyah is an Ola.
Carbon oil, yeah. But anyway, I'll leave it to the Kaihanim to figure it out.
That's why I was saying you slaughtered the day before, and then you.
But it's not. But it's not so. But it's not so. Not so.
Okay.
So that's the with carbonates, which is really what we said yesterday, and that's how we learned it. And then the Gemara had mentioned that is there a mitzvah of simcha on the first night, and the answer was no. There is no mitzvah of simcha on the first night, and the mitzvah of simcha really it is on the last night and includes Shmini Atzeres, but doesn't apply to the first night. That's what our Gemara seemed to conclude, and then we got involved in the whole discussion of the difference between simcha and eineg, the mitzvah of rejoicing on Yom Tov, compared to the mitzvah of eineg for Shabbos, and we mentioned a number of different things about it. And really what we're dealing with is the sort of reconciling our Gemara with what I mentioned that is brought down from the Shagas Aryeh, that if a person drinks the 4 cups of wine in one shot, it creates a big problem because the Gemara there says he doesn't fulfill the 4 cups because he didn't do it in a regular on the Seder along with the Seder, but he does fulfill the mitzvah of simcha, and that contradicts our Gemara where it says there's no simcha the night of Yom Tov. So how do you deal with that? There's no simcha, but you fulfilled the mitzvah of simcha. Which mitzvah of simcha? And so there were different ways of reconciling that. The Shagas Aryeh wanted to say there is a mitzvah of simcha. It's rabbinic. Biblically, there's no mitzvah of simcha. Rabbinically, there's a mitzvah of simcha on the night, and therefore you could answer it that way. That was the Shagas Aryeh's way of understanding it. But others want to say that no, there's a biblical mitzvah of simcha. It's just a different type of simcha than the Shalmei simcha. Shalmei simcha, you're not obligated. Our Gemara was talking about the peace offering simcha. When you bring a peace offering and you eat that meat, that's also an element of simcha. But besides that, there's also a biblical obligation of simcha, of other types of joy, and that applies even on the first night. And so therefore, that would be applicable. Now, and then we got involved in talking about the difference between if there is simcha on a rabbinic level or only on a biblical level. That's what I got involved in, like the difference between the way the Avnei Nezer understands it and the way the Shagas Aryeh understand. Like, what's the difference if there's a mitzvah of simcha, a mitzvah to be joyous? How does that affect? What difference does it make? So I mentioned a few points. One is about getting married, Erev Yom Tov, and Ein Ma'arvin Simcha B'Simcha. We spoke about you're not allowed to have 2 simchas. You can't just mix 2 simchas together and basically minimize the joy by mixing another simcha up with it. And so that would be on Yom Tov, but it wouldn't apply on Shabbos. We also spoke about the Kiddush Levana, that maybe Kiddush Levana is Ein Ma'arvin Simcha B'Simcha, and you shouldn't do Kiddush Levana on Yom Tov. Now, of course, if you didn't, I believe you would still do Kiddush Levana, but in a preferable situation, the preferable thing is not to wait till the night of Yom Tov to do, because Ein Ma'arvin Simcha B'Simcha, you wouldn't want to mix the 2 simchas. In fact, it does. They do bring down. There is a sefer that brings that you can't even do. You shouldn't do Kiddush Levana even on Shabbos. Ein Ma'arvin Simcha B'Simcha. And on that, one of the commentaries says, "What do you mean? Ein Ma'arvin Simcha B'Simcha? It doesn't apply to Shabbos. Shabbos is no simcha." And so it seems to be a somewhat of a area of question about this mitzvah of simcha on Shabbos. And Jeffrey brought that we do say Yismachu Malchuscha on Shabbos, and Yismachu Malchuscha does sound like there is a mitzvah of simcha. So we do seem to have some sources for a mitzvah of simcha. Just to conclude with one other thing. So we did say that on Purim, you would be allowed to make a chasana because since Purim is D'Rabbanan, there's no problem of ein ma'arvin simcha b'simcha. So what comes out is that something that's D'Rabbanan, there's no problem. So in this situation, if you would say simcha, if you hold like the Shagas Aryeh, there's only D'Rabbanan, then you would be allowed to arrange a wedding, seemingly on Erev Yom Tov. But the Magen Avraham seems to hold that it's Daraisa, and he says you can't arrange a wedding on Erev Yom Tov. But it would sound like maybe the Shagas Aryeh would hold you allowed to. We said that you do it on Shabbos because it's not a problem. It's not a problem of Ein Ma'arvin Simcha B'Simcha. Now, the problem with all this, in addition to being Jeffrey's source, which is a very good source, it's definitely a nice hint. There's also a Yerushalmi that talks about Purim that falls on Shabbos. Purim falls on Shabbos. So the Gemara Yerushalmi says you have to push off the Su'uda till Motzei Shabbos because Purim this is what the Yerushalmi says, Purim needs, you need to have joy that you're oisim es yoim, you have to be the ones making it, that the joy is dependent on the Bezdin, that the Bezdin says what day Purim is, and because Bezdin sanctifies the month, they decide what day. That's the type of joy that we need to have for Purim. And but Shabbos is, it says that's a joy that's from Bidei Shamayim. So what does that Gemara imply? That Shabbos also has joy, just it's from heaven. And the joy that we need Purim to be is a joy that you make because you establish the months, and that joy can't be on Shabbos. So that you have to have after Shabbos. So that therefore you would have according to Yerushalmi, says you would have it after Shabbos. You push it off till after Shabbos. And the final proof, and this is a real good proof, Jeffrey, that you could add to your list, that is that the Sifri says, Uvayom simchaschem, uvamayadechem, the days of all these special days. So what does it mean, the Yom Simchaschem, the days of your Simcha, and Mayadechem, your holiday? So Mayed is the holidays. So what's of Yom Simchaschem? So the Sifri says, Elu HaShabbosos. These are the Shabbosos that it means it's Shabbos, that Simcha is Shabbos, that Shabbos is Simcha. So it's a clear Sifri. So, turns out that the Beis Yosef brings this, and he brings it in the in his commentary on the Torah. Beis Yosef, Rabbi Yosef Cairo brings this, and he says because of this we say Yismachu. Because of the Sifri, that's why we say Yismachu. That there is some element of Simcha. There is Simcha even on Shabbos. On the other hand, you have the Maharil says that a Tainis Chaloim on Shabbos you're allowed to fast, the fast of a Chaloim, of a bad dream. Why? Because there's no mitzvah of Simcha. So he says the opposite. No mitzvah of Simcha. That's why you can fast the Tainis Chaloim on Shabbos. Anyway, it seems to be a very contradictory, lot of different sources. Is there Simcha on Shabbos or not? And
are you permitted to get married on Shabbos?
Well, we're not really. We weren't talking about getting married on Yom Tov or Shabbos. We're talking about getting married Erev and having the meal on Shabbos.
I did that.
You did that? Oh, wow.
My father wanted us to get married. We did it down on the beach, Miami Beach, the Carriage Club. We got married on the beach at the condominium. And then we went to Mincha, and then we went to the first of our Sheva Brachos.
Wow.
It was
so
nice.
So that was Erev Shabbos, but it wasn't Erev Yom Tov.
No.
It
was.
Erev Yom Tov,
it was Washington's birthday weekend.
So Erev Yom Tov, we learned yesterday that it would have been a problem because Ein Ma'arvin Simcha B'Simcha, that you're not allowed to mix two simchas, and if you have your meal on Yom Tov for your wedding, that would be a problem because you're mixing two celebrations together, and each one is sort of loses its impact. It's
We
losing
don't do
its.
Sheva brachas. We don't do Sheva brachas on Yom Tov.
Well, I guess Sheva brachas is different, but the actual wedding would be a more serious thing. That's a good question about Sheva brachas. I'm not sure why that is. I guess it's not considered as much of a simcha as the wedding. But the thing is that the wedding, so the wedding would be allowed on Erev Shabbos, and this was the common custom actually. What you did, that was used
That's
to be.
What my father said. That's what they used to do. That's why he wanted to do it. So I said, okay.
Right. So anyway, bottom line is that there seems to be different opinions about simcha on Shabbos, and there is a sikha where the Rebbe brings some of these sources. He mentions that he tries to reconcile it, and he says that for sure Shabbos has simcha, but the simcha of Shabbos is not revealed. It's a typical Hasidic type of insight that there's revelations that are not, that we don't always feel, you can't connect to. So the Shabbos has simcha, but it's not a simcha gluya. It's batel in the oineg. It's batel. It's nullified in the inyan of oineg, which is even greater than simcha. So because oineg is overpowering, it overpowers the elements of simcha, and therefore in some scenarios we don't really take the simcha into. Of course, you'd have to reconcile each one individually. Why here do we look at the fact that it's hidden and it's not revealed? And here we say, well, there's simcha on Shabbos. You know what I mean? You'd have to go through each individual case and sort of like work it out, figure out why here do we say the simcha is effective, and here we say it's not, or is there different opinions about that? But basically, there seems to be an inyan of simcha, as Jeffrey said. But our Gemara mentions that on Yom Tov, the first night of Yom Tov, it implies like there's no simcha, and we said it depends how you want to learn it. It's either there's only drabanan simcha, or you could learn that it is a simcha that is a different simcha than shalmei simcha. It's a different fulfillment, a different obligation than the shlomim, than the shalmei simcha. All right, so that's the.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. It's an interesting discussion.
Yeah. Okay, so now getting back to where we continued yesterday, the next Mishnah. So the next Mishnah was speaking about the Nisuch HaMayim ceremony. And the Nisuch HaMayim ceremony was done when the Yidden brought the korban in the morning, the Tamid Shel Shachar, in addition to bringing the wine libation, they would also bring a water libation. And we learned that it's either learned from a hint from the Psukim, or it's Mem Yud Mem, or it's a Halacha L'Moshe Sinai, and it's a law given to Moshe at Sinai that we have to pour, because the Torah doesn't clearly say pouring water. And that's why the Tzedukim, who only believed in the written Torah, they disagreed with this whole ceremony. And because of that, we tried to make a big deal out of the ceremony, and to try to make it very clear that we are doing a water ceremony that everyone should know about. So the Nisuch HaMayim, the Mishnah says, how was it done? So they would have a tzloiches of a golden pitcher that would hold 3 lugin, and 3 lugin is the same as saying revias hahin, a quarter of a hin. 3 lug was a quarter of a hin because a hin had 12 lugs. So 3 lugs would be a quarter of a hin. And we mention revias hahin as part of the wine libations in all of the musaf, when we talk about the musaf in the davening, the musaf sacrifices, we mention revias hahin, lakebes, we mentioned all of the amount of libation was dependent on which animal, but the smallest was the revius ahin, a quarter of a hin. And so the law of the Nisach Hamayim was going to be the same amount as the smallest of the wine libations, and that would be the revius ahin. And this is 3 loops, and they would fill it from the shiloyach. The shiloyach was a mayon, was a well, and the well was either because you needed to have a well, it had to be mei mayon, the well, and or it says that it ushavta mayim besasin mimayne hayeshua, that it's hinted to that it should be a mayon of salvation. A mayon also means a well, so it sounds like a lechatchila preferable to have it as from a well. Now, the other reason why they would take it from this shiloyach was what I was mentioning just before, that they wanted to do it with great publicity. So when they would take it from the shiloyach, it was more public knowledge with getting the water for the water libation. So this would be another reason. So it's either because it had to be a mei mayon, or it was more of a preferable that it should be mei mayon, water from a mayon, from a well, or because they wanted to publicize this ceremony. Now, the Mishnah continues and says that when they would reach the Shar Hamayim, the gate of the water, which was somewhere in the south of the Azara, of the courtyard, so they called it this because that's where they would go through with the water libation. They called it the Shar Hamayim. So they would blow the shofar, or the trumpets, Taku, Hariu, Tekiah, Teruah, Tekiah. And they would do this as a way of rejoicing, simcha. Or, as we keep mentioning, that it was in order to publicize this ceremony. So again, they did it at the shiloyach to publicize it. They blew the trumpets with the Tekiah, Teruah, Tekiah. Allah Bakevesh, and then the Kayin would go up on this ramp, the ramp was on the southern side of the Mizbeach, of the altar, and which was also on the southern side of the base of of the courtyard of the Beis Hamikdash, and he would turn left, and what he would reach on when he turned left was the southwestern corner of the altar, and there were 2 sephalim, 2 bowls of silver that were there. Rabbi Yehuda says they weren't silver, they were sid. Sid means like lime or plaster, and but they would be dark like silver. They would be dark because of the wine, and the wine was more reddish than dark black, but it would get black because all red, at least it's mentioned in the Gemara and many times, that black turns red, that red turns black. Mentions it about blood, that if a woman sees blood and it looks black, that we assume that it was really red and it got dark. So anyway, so the question of why does Rabbi Yehuda argue and say it wasn't silver? So seemingly Rabbi Yehuda holds that the altar cannot have any metal on it. And the simple understanding you can't have metal on it means you can't cut the altar with metal. But it seems like Rabbi Yehuda holds, no, you can't even have metal touching the altar. And, you can't, so therefore, what?
They have a pasuk for that.
Yeah, but what does it mean? Does it mean you can't cut? The simple meaning is you can't cut, like sonif alehem barzel. Like sonif alehem barzel, right? That's right. Yeah, but that sounds like when you're talking about cutting it, not actually have metal on it. Now, Rabbi Yehuda does hold that all metal are considered like iron, and therefore, if they're all included, silver would also be included. So maybe the opinion of the rabbis is that silver is not part of that problem. Or the rabbis hold it's totally not a problem. It's only when you make the altar. But somehow Rabbi Yehuda has a problem with the silver, and because of this law that you can't have metal on the altar, and therefore he says it was made out of sid. Now, then the Mishnah says that these bowls had a hole, and it was like two noses, two nostrils. And one of them was thicker and one of them was thinner. In other words, one was a bigger hole, one was a smaller hole, in order that they should finish at the same time. Now, the nostrils and the nose that we're talking about, the simple understanding seems to be that it had a spout, almost like a hot water urn that has a little dispenser on the bottom that sticks out horizontally and allows you to dispense from the hot water. So that's what it had over here. The two sfalim, they sort of like you would pour it on the top of the bowl, and it would come out through the side dispenser, and it would drip down onto the mizbeach. And that would be the way Rashi seems to learn. Tosfos doesn't seem to like that pshat. Tosfos over here says maybe it didn't have an actual nose sticking out. Maybe it was just a bowl, and the hole in the bowl we call a nostril. That had a hole in the bowl and it went straight down. So seemingly what the argument has to do with is, does the libations have to be on the altar? Is it like a sacrifice? Or can it go straight into where it's supposed to go? Or does it have to actually go on the altar? That's seemingly what the argument here, Rashi and Tosfos is. Again, there might be different ways of learning, but that's maybe one of the ways. And yeah, am I cutting?
No, you're here. I have a picture.
Oh, sure. David, it's coming.
Yeah, you got it?
No. Does everyone else see it? I don't see it.
Yes.
Oh, okay. So for some reason I'm not able to see it. Maybe because it's a phone. All right. Let me try one thing. Let's see this. No. Okay. Anyway, I can't see it, but hope you all enjoyed the picture. Okay.
Well,
We're gonna.
it's very easy to describe it.
Okay.
So, because I wouldn't call it a bowl. I would call it a funnel.
Uh-huh.
And the water doesn't really go on the mizbeach, like dripping over onto it necessarily. Depends how fast you pour it.
Uh-huh. Right. Okay. All right.
But remember, this is one corner of the mizbeach. The
Right.
flame, and the things that are burning are further away from this.
Yes, for sure. Yes. Okay. So, okay. Thank you, David. Thank you, David. I'm gonna just mute everyone. For some reason, I hear like background noise.
Yeah.
Okay. So now it should be quiet. Okay. So, the Mishnah continues and says that the west Marava Shalmayim, the western one was the water one, and the eastern one was the wine bowl. And the reason for that is famous rule: Tadir v'she'enai tadir, tadir koidem. Something that's more common, more often, always comes first before the thing that's less regular, less often. And so you would want to first be by the you give a preference to something that's more often. So that would be closer to you. The further one away is going to be the water, the water bowl. and they would pour. And so the Mishnah then mentions what happens if they messed up and they poured the wrong one in the wrong hole. It says Yatza, you still fulfilled the obligation. Now Rabbi Yehuda comes along and he says that what we just said is not exactly correct. He says, first of all, the pitcher only held one lug because Nisoch HaMayim only needs one lug, does not need to have 3 lugim. And the understanding of Rabbi Yehuda, even though we mentioned that all libations always had 3 or more, it was always a quarter of a hin or a third of a hin. So the reason of Rabbi Yehuda is it's halacha l'maishem Sinai. Halacha l'maishem Sinai has no rule. We can't go around making our own understanding of that. That's whatever the halacha l'maishem Sinai was. It's a lug. A lug is a lug. That's what it was. It was one lug, a certain measure of I believe our revius is a revius halug. If that's correct, that means a lug is 4 kiddush cups. So if the kiddush cup is 3 ounces, this would be like 12 ounces. Anyway, Yehuda holds it's a lug, and that's what they used. And he says it's not only is that one thing that I argue on, also they would be menasech kol shmoina all 8 days, even shmini atzeres. It had an element of they also did the water libation even on shmini atzeres. And then the person who was going to pour it, he would tell him, lift up your hand so everyone can see that you're pouring where it's supposed to pour, and which is into the bowl and not maybe somewhere else, because you don't believe in this. Because there was a time, one time happened that someone poured on his feet because he didn't believe in it. He was a tzeduki, and they didn't believe in Nisoch HaMayim, the water libation ceremony, because it's a halacha l'maishem Sinai, and it's not written in the Torah in a revealed way. And everyone stoned him with their esrogim. Okay, now we're up to the Mishnah, K'maaseo b'choil. We are about 8 lines from the top of the page on 48b. 48b, 8 lines from the top of the page. K'maaseo b'choil, like the way it was done during the week, Kach Maaseo b'Shabbos, that's the way it was done on Shabbos also. Ella, but they had a little problem. They were not able to take the water from the Shiloach and bring it to Beis HaMikdash. So they had to fill it before Shabbos. They would fill the golden pitcher from Erev Shabbos. She'ena mikudeshes min hashiloach. Umanicha belishka. They would fill a golden pitcher that was not makudesh, it was not sanctified. And of course, we'll see in the Gemara why that was. But they would fill it from the shiloach. They would fill it from this spring, umanicha belishka, and place it in the office, in the room, and in the place where they would keep it there. And nishbecha, if it spilled, niskalsa, or if it became opened, it wasn't covered, hayamamale min hakiyar, they would end up filling up from the sink that was in the courtyard of the Beis HaMikdash that the Kohanim would use to wash their hands and feet. So they would fill this from that. Now, shehayayin v'hamayim agulin, because wine and water that's left open is psulin legabe mizbeach, is invalid to use for the mizbeach, and the reason is we're afraid that a snake maybe spit some of its venom into the water, and it comes out that you have less than the proper amount because the venom from the snake is filling the measurement. At least that's what we're understanding at this point, that's the problem. Okay. Now, this Rashi brings this, what I just shared with you. Rashi says this, that the Chayshinon were concerned, Shemashasa mehen nachash, a snake drank from it, ve'eres mu'urav behen, and his poison is mixed with the water, and it turns out that you're not menasech kishir, the amount that's needed, because the eres is mashlim the shir. The eres is this venom in the poison that's in the water, that it's spit in the water. Okay. Comes the Gemara. Gemara says, how do you know that you blow the trumpets on at the time that they would draw the water? So not immediately, how do we know this? So and you have to draw the water with joy, etc. So this teaches us that it has to be done in a way that is joyous. So we see that that it was done in a way that was that was rejoicing. Now others learn the Gemara's question not to be how do you know you draw it while you're blowing the shofar. That's the way Rashi learns, but others want to learn that it means over here that how do you know that it needs to be a mayon from a well? So that the Gemara says, Shabtamayim b'sasim. Okay, that's another way of reading the Gemara. Hanu trei mini. There were two apikorsim, two heretics. Chad shmei sasain v'chad shmei simcha. One of them's name was Sasain, and one of them's name was Simcha. Amar le Sasain la Simcha. So Sasain told Simcha. It's a very cute little Gemara, which deserves it must have a deep understanding to it. There must be a deeper meaning to this, but on a very simple level, it just seems like a joke almost. But it says there were two apikorsim, two heretics, and one of them's name was Sasain, another one's name was Simcha. And so Sasain told Simcha, I am better than you. Ana adifa minna. Because it says Sasain v'Simcha yasigu. It says me first. Sasain and Simcha, they will grasp. So it says my name first. So Amar Le, so Simcha says back, Amar Le Simcha l'Sasain, Ana adifa minach, I'm better than you. Simcha v'Sasain la Yehudim. It says the Simcha and then Sasain. So I'm better than you. So Amar Le Sasain l'Simcha. So Sasain says back to Simcha, Chad Yoima Shavkoch. One day they are going to remove you from the heavens, Vishavyuch Parvanka, and they will make you into like a emissary, someone who runs before the is like a escort runner. As it says, Ki b'simcha seitzeyu. With simcha, you're going to go out. So in other words, simcha is going to be the one who's going to be. I'm sorry. One day, Shavkuch, they are going to choose you from. In other words, the heavens is going to choose. Not they're going to send you from heaven. From heavens they're going to send you on a mission, and you're going to have to be the sort of like the runner. Let me mute everyone. Okay, so then it says, so Amar Le, so Simcha says back to him, Chad Yoima Shavkoch. One day they're going to send you, and Umalu Bach Maya, and they're going to fill you with water. As it says, Ushavtem Mayim B'Sasai. So they're gonna sort of like take your you will be. One second, did I say right? It says, they will fill you with water, and so it says so Amar Le Haumina the Shmei Sasin. So Sasin answers back, Lervavo, Asidisu, another story really. This is a new story. So Min, and a heretic, told his name was Sasin, he told Rebavo, Asidisu the Timluli Maya la Almadasi. You are gonna fill me with water. As it says, Shavta Mayim Besasin. You will draw water into Sasin. And so it sounds like you're going to be bringing me water. So Amar Le, so Ravo answered him back. You have a ksiv lisasain, if it would say with a lamed, which means we'll draw water to sasain. Then it might be right that you could say, oh, we're going to be drawing water to you. Hashta the ksiv bisasain, and now that it says bisasain, mashche dahu gavra meshamid meshavinan leguda, the skin of that person, which means you. We're going to be making into a flask, umalina be maya, we're going to fill you with water. So whatever these the stories mean, but it seems to be making a joke about how the heretics wasted their time because they don't really understand the meaning of the psukim. So whatever they say about it is basically like a joke. It's basically nonsense. They speak nonsense because they don't have the tradition. I'm just throwing a thought that might be the meaning here, that they're just, they're speaking nonsense because they don't have the tradition. You need to have a tradition of what the meaning of the psukim are. Otherwise, you'll make a joke out of it because you can't really understand it anyway. Everything that you say is really just a joke out of it because you don't understand. You don't know the code, how to translate it, so you're just translating it the way you want. That's the same as doing this. What they did here. That I'm better than you because it says simcha first, and you're better than me because it says sussing first. And and then Rebavo really told him, oh, you're learning it this way. Guess what? We're going to be actually doing a whole body transplant on you. And we're going to fill you with water and remove your whole body. We'll just have your skin like a flask, basically just put him in his place. All right, we're going to stop here. Sei gesund, everyone. Have a wonderful day.
Thank you, Rabbi.
Okay, you're welcome.
Bye.
Thank you, Rebbe. Have a
Okay.